Good afternoon and welcome. Happy to have you joining us in this CBI webinar about edible nuts. Today we're going to be talking about entering the European market for macadamia nuts, and we trust that we have a very interesting program set up for you today. But before we dive into the content, let's just start with a little introduction and housekeeping. So my name is Tonia Dapple. I'm going to be your moderator for this afternoon. I'm an independent consultant, work with CBI from time to time, and I work with European and African businesses on areas as diverse as funding, business growth, and exporting to Europe or to regional markets. So as I said, a little housekeeping. The first thing that, if you're new to us, the first thing that you need to know is that we are going to be playing around with a poll, and I am trying to move my presentation forward, but there is a bit of a lag. There we are. So the most important things to know if you are joining us for the first time today is that we are using GoToWebinar. And GoToWebinar as a program unfortunately means that we cannot hear you and we cannot see you. We are still very happy to have you here, but unfortunately we cannot communicate with you directly. So if you do have questions that you'd like to share with us, please use the questions tab to share your questions. If you run into any issues in terms of audio or video, usually the easiest solution is just to log out of the webinar and then use the link in the confirmation email to log back in. That usually solves all of the problems. But in case it doesn't, you can still try switching to a phone call to listen in to the webinar. And in that case, if you do use your phone, it is going to be a local call, so you're not making any international calls. Now, we have a number of question and answer sessions in the webinar, so please, again, do feel free to share your questions. We will do our best to answer as many as possible. And we have a poll, not too many polls because we have a number of speakers today and they have so much interesting content to share with you that we don't want to take up too much of your time. There is one poll that I would like to kick off with, and basically that is very simply to see if everything is working as it should. And I am calling it up now. You should be able to see my general screen. And you should now also be able to see the poll. So we would like to know, where are you from? Go Africa. A lot of attendees today from Africa. Europe is a close second. Welcome. And I know that we have a lot of companies joining us from Kenya today as well. So welcome to you, a special welcome to you, because we know that CBI is running a program that has been running a program for a number of years in Kenya, especially focused on macadamia. So we're really happy to have you joining us. So I'm going to leave it open for just a few more seconds. 75% of our attendees have voted so far, and Africa is still in the lead with 56% of attendees, followed by Europe at 27%. Then we have South Asia actually overtaking South America with 8%, South America 6%, and the rest of our attendees are from the US, Canada, and or Australia. We're really excited to have such a diverse population with us today, and it's a good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Thank you for voting. See that about 85% of attendees have voted. See that a few more people are voting. I am counting down in 3, 2, and 1, so that I can show you very briefly the results. As you can see, a lot of attendees from Africa. Once again, welcome. So before we dive into our presentation today, I think the most important thing, a couple of other things that are important to share with you, is that we are recording the session. So if you do lose your connection during the session, that is not a problem, because we're going to be sharing the link with you at the end. Or if you happen to have to leave early, we will be sharing the link with you so that you can rewatch the webinar at your convenience. And this webinar that we are hosting today is based on the market studies that CBI does. So one of the market studies is about entering the European market for macadamia. But before we join our experts so that I introduce them, I would like to ask Simone, the program manager at CBI, to switch on and, well, basically just welcome you to the session today. Hello, Simone. Simone, I am not hearing you.
Oh, there we go. I think it should be working.
Yes, it should be working now indeed.
Great. Thank you, Tonya. And thank you to everybody joining us today. We're really excited to have you, as Tonya just mentioned. Indeed, as Tonya was explaining, CBI is the host for today's webinar. So I'll start out with giving a quick introduction for those of you that don't know us yet. There we go. So I'm Simone Snoeienbos. I'm a program manager at CBI. CBI is the Center for the Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries. We are a governmental agency, so we're part of the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, and we receive our funding from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands. Our mission as agency is to support SMEs, entrepreneurs, processors, and farmers to strengthen their sustainability through their exports to Europe, but often also to other markets in the region. So how do we do this? We basically have two ways that we approach our mission. One of them is by offering practical solutions for bottlenecks that many of you may experience. So we provide hands-on and practical support in guiding processors or farmers in their journey towards accessing the European market. Tony already mentioned it. We have been active in different macadamia sectors across the world. We have a running program in Kenya, and we actually have a pretty exciting opportunity for some of you who aren't participating in our project to apply and to join. So if you stick around at the end, I'll give you some information about where you can email us and how you can request the form to apply to be part of one of CBI's projects. But I mentioned we have two different ways in which we try to accomplish our mission of supporting you. One of them being the projects, and another one being through our market intelligence. So what we do with this is to try to create knowledge, because we know that market information and information about the channels and ways in which you can access this market can be hard to come by. So what we do as CBI is commission market information that our experts from all over the world carry out from us, and make it freely available on our website, cbi.eu/market/information. This information that we publish is specifically tailored for a target group that includes aspiring and exporting SMEs in developing countries, a big focus on Africa and Asia. So happy to see where most of you are coming from. And what that practically looks like is our market studies basically provide information of what the European market looks like. It gives you very practical and hands-on tips on how to access this market, how to do business, how to find buyers, and what requirements the European market may have in store for you that you need to be preparing for. We have a very good recent product fact sheet, a market information study specifically for macadamia. And if you stick around towards the end, I'll show you how you can find this in our market information website. With that, I'd like to hand it over to our presenters. So back to you, Tonya.
Thank you very much, Simone. And I'm just going to call up my screen again. We've been having a couple of technical issues with the GoToWebinar program today. And it is again, instead of showing my there we go. Okay, sorry about the technical bust up at the beginning. So as Simone already said, there's a lot of information that we have to share with you today. And one of the things that I'm personally really excited about is that we have a speaker today who's going to tell you a little bit more about another market opportunity that we don't really hear a lot about when it comes to exporting macadamia to Europe. Just to give you a very brief overview of the topics that we are covering today. So we're going to tell you the main things that you need to know about entering the European market. And our experts will be talking about the legal requirements that you need to be aware of, as well as recent developments with regards to those legal requirements and buyer requirements. The market has changed a lot over the past few years with COVID, with the energy crisis, with the inflation that we've had in Europe. So there have been quite a number of developments, and we think that it's really important for you to be up to date about these developments and know how they might affect the exports that you are planning to do. So one of the key issues that is obviously going to surprise no one is food safety. I'm happy to say that the requirements there haven't essentially changed, or there are some nuances that you need to be aware of. And in addition to that, we're going to tell you a little bit about buying macadamia from a buyer's perspective. So we have two business representatives joining us today. And at this moment, I would just like to invite our three speakers to switch on their cameras, and I am going to ask them to do a very brief introduction before we kick off and go into the content. There they are. And I'm going to go in alphabetical order. So Aleksandar, you are our market researcher. Would you please give us a very brief introduction?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Aleksandar Jovanovic, and I work as an international consultant mostly in the processed fruit and vegetable sector, very focusedly in the couple of last years in the edible nuts and dried fruit sector. Currently also I work in the Kenyan Macadamia project, so I will be very happy to support you in sharing all information I know about the market.
And Aleksandar is joining us today from Serbia. Thank you, Aleksandar. Jens, over to you.
Good day to everyone. Quite excited to be here again. Some of you have seen me probably two years ago. My name is Jens Borchert, and I'm a partner in a small business here in Germany, close to Hamburg. We are importing macadamia nuts, and we pack and roast them, but we also handle other nuts as well. I'm a member of the Warenverein and also vice chairman at FOCOM, which is our European lobbying institution.
Thank you, Jens. And as Jens already said, he's joining us from Germany today. Our third speaker is Yannic. Hello, Yannic.
Yes, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. My name is Yannic Sommer, working for the company Henri Lamotte, also joining in from Germany, and I'm also located and based in Germany, 35 years of age, and I'm working in the purchasing department in a senior buyer role, and especially focusing on purchasing of macadamia oil in all its different qualities.
And that is the interesting market opportunity that I was referring to earlier, macadamia kernel nut oil. So we're really interested to hear about that. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And without further ado, I would like to hand over the microphone to Aleksandar as we all switch off and Aleksandar gives us a brief overview of what we need to know.
Okay, hello again. I hope that you can see my screen. Okay, shall we start, Tonya?
Would you like me to move the slides for you, Aleksandar?
No, I can move it. I was just checking if you see my screen. And
yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, good. So we can start now. I will spend next.
Aleksandar, sorry, your screen has just frozen on my screen.
I'm just, yeah, I don't know, I don't have any message that it is stopped.
Not a problem. Let me just return the presenting rights to you. So I'm going to take them away for a second and then return them to you. There we see Aleksandar.
Okay, but it says that my screen is now paused.
And apologies, everyone. As I said earlier, we've been having some difficulties with GoToWebinar today. And as you can see, from time to time, that just makes things a little difficult. Aleksandar, should I just share the screen for you?
Yeah, I think it is better because I'm moving the slides, but it's apparently you cannot see it. So it's better that you share the screen and you can move the slides for me.
There we go. So I'm just going to click through. Brief introduction of who Aleksandar is. And there is the first slide. So just give me a sign when you need me to move to the next one.
Okay, you can just move and we start to the next one. Okay, thank you very much. We are going to spend next 15 minutes slightly dipping down into the couple of topics related to the current trends influencing the macadamia nuts in Europe. Also, we will have very slight information about most recent requirements in development, and to have a small overview about what is going on in the main competing country producing macadamia nuts. So we can move on. Okay, I think that it is quite obvious all around the world that the main trend in Europe, not affecting only macadamias, but very much affecting macadamias, is price inflation, which is caused by the ongoing war in Ukraine. Unfortunately, the main result of this price inflation is that the many consumers are slightly going down in buying kind of luxury products, and macadamia nut is seen as a luxury product. What is expected is not possible to fully forecast because now we have the new war in Israel, and it's very difficult to have like a long-term forecast. But according to the International Monetary Fund, we can have maybe inflation back to, let's say, normal sometime in 2025 to 2025, but it is not fully certain. We can move on. And as I already mentioned, macadamia nuts are most expensive snacking nut in the European market, and because of that, it's less affordable for average consumers. And the main implication for that is actually that sales of macadamia markets are not going so smoothly, especially over the last 2 years. But according to some forecasts, we can see some first signs of the market recovery. We can move on. Yeah, Tonya, can you, next one? Yeah, actually, this is just the statistics that we can see the first effect of the cost pressure. As you can see, the volumes were really steadily going up until 2021. But when this price inflation started, import started to going down. So it was almost reached 10,000 tons in Europe, and now it decreased in less than 9,500 tons approximately in 2023. But 2023 is not yet over, so we don't know the full estimation of the full year because now it is already only November. Can we move on? Yeah, we can see now again from country to country, it is finishing in 2022. That for example, in Germany, you see the big drop. Consumption was 3,500 tons in 2021, but in 2021 is dropped almost for 1,000 tons, huge drop. We see the similar trend in most of the other major consuming countries. Can we move on? And this is just an example of Germany as the biggest macadamia market. So maybe we could see some market recovery. This graph is showing only the first 9 months of the import between January and September, because this is something that we can officially track now in 2023. And we see that actually in the first 9 months, Germany imported more macadamia kernels compared to the last year. So it could be maybe promising forecast for the next year. Can we move on? Yeah, this is obvious, I think, for everybody of you who is exporting macadamia nuts and watching this webinar. This is very obvious example of real and very extreme price decrease. This is just one example from the industry source. We can see South Africa style 4 X-Works price exported to United Kingdom, and the price is euro per ton. So we can see that it was moving, it was reaching some above 14 euros per kilo, let's say, in 2021, but it decreased in less than 8 euros per kilo in 2023 in August this year. So I think this is the reality that everybody needs to face, and maybe to start living with that. This is the cost pressure effect number 3. So we can see that, for example, macadamia nuts, this is the example of Ritter Sport, which is the leading chocolate brand in Germany. A couple of years ago, they introduced for the first time in Europe the regular macadamia chocolate, and all those type of chocolate had very unified price. So it was not important if it is hazelnut or macadamia nuts inside, the price was same. Now this product is removed from the market, and now we have only something like this, a special occasion for Christmas, and it is not the same price like other chocolate with nuts, but it has higher price. We can move on to see the last effect.
Yes, and Alexander, we have one request from our audience. I think not everyone is a native English speaker, so if you could please speak a little slower.
Okay, yes, I will slow down. I was just wanted to use my time more efficiently. Okay, and this is the cost pressure effect number 4. Because of the price inflation, we see the high increase of the sales in the terms of the private labels. Private labels are brands of the European retail chains, and especially we see quite huge increase of shares in the so-called discounters, the retail chains that are offering products on the, let's say, kind of discounted prices. The most obvious example in Europe are Lidl and Aldi. And for example, one of the photos that showed the macadamia ice cream, actually ice cream with macadamia pieces, is a brand of Lidl, which is actually a retail chain which have own ice cream production factory. And the increase of those shares of retail chains is becoming bigger, but also at the same time it means pressure of the suppliers. So the retail chains are asking suppliers to decrease the prices all the time. And all other are examples of the macadamia nuts. For example, the last one with the price almost 10 euros is example of the organic macadamia nut. In this pack, when it is transformed to kilos, means that 1 kilo of this packaging costs almost 50 euros per kilo. We can go next label. And now next to the price trend, we also have some long-term trends. The first one is sustainability. The sustainability is, I think, the most important word in Europe now, and it is not only like consumer trend, it is also very important topic on the official level of the European Commission, which is now implemented so-called European Green Deal strategy for sustainability for Europe. Another one is that more consumers are reading labels. They're very much interested what is inside the packaging. And so this one example is macadamia nut, which is not salted and roasted. It is without salt. And what is interesting is actually that now the consumers in Europe are trying to find so-called healthy diet food. And macadamia is a very interesting example because it gets very well into the so-called ketogenic diet, which is a diet which is low in carbohydrates and high in oils. And macadamia nut, which is the richest nut in oil, is actually provides some opportunities and a couple of examples. So you can see a couple of examples of the companies selling those so-called keto products. We can move on the next one. Hi, Tonya, can you move on the next one?
Yes, I can. And there is again a slide. There we go.
Yes, I think, but we should also have a slide about bio requirements, maybe before this one. Yeah, this one. Yeah, and this is just a slight overview. I think that Jens and Yannic will tell you a little bit more about bio requirements ongoing in Europe. I just wanted to say that we have standard requirements on microbiology, mycotoxins, and chlorates that all companies need to regularly measure. What is now increasing hot topic is the testing the macadamia nuts and especially oils. On the level of mineral oil hydrocarbons, and this is so-called motion noir, and now it is quite interesting topic. This legislation on the level of Europe is going to be implemented soon, but Germany is already implementing this regulation. We have new expectations and requirements related to European Green Deal, which means lowering level of pesticides. There is already in place new organic food regulation with quite a lot of new requirements, especially related to association of the organic producers. More tests will be required for organic production, for example. Now what is the quite big trend that many companies are placing sustainability related labels on their packaging. They are usually related either on nutritional labeling and environmental labeling. On environmental labeling, many companies are trying to present themselves as carbon neutral, which is according to science, scientific studies is not possible actually. And because of that, European Union is now working on the rules how you can label carbon emission and place it on your label in order to avoid greenwashing, cheating consumers. And from the buyer side, you will see hear more from Jens and Yannic, but we can say that that food safety certification is really must. So 99% of the macadamia exporters to Europe already are certified, and most common certification schemes are either IFS, quite popular in Germany, but also BRC, global standard, which is more popular in the United Kingdom, but also we have FSSC 22000, which is popular in France, but in Germany and many other countries actually. And there is development of this type of certification that for the small and medium companies can go step by step. So we have like a BRC start program that you can go step by step, etc. What is very important now, as you can see, macadamia in Europe is mostly used as a snack, but also as pieces are used in ice cream. And ice cream is, for example, very sensitive to the microbiological contamination. And because of that, there is increasing the number of buyers who is insisting that companies exporting to Europe have use pasteurization lines and sterilization lines, which makes production more expensive. Of course, different companies will have different grades, like very common is actually for roasting companies to require at least 70% style 1. And what is quite important now developing, and it is going to develop further, is that most of the companies now need to be audited or certified with some of the sustainability schemes. Currently, most popular in Europe is SMETA audit, but also BSCI is also very popular. And yeah, this is what is going on. We can really recommend companies to go to SMETA or BSI certification or audit. There is also the third one, which is called SA8000. This is the third-party certification, maybe the best one, but it is quite complicated and very expensive for the companies. So most of the companies are finding solutions to go to SMETA or BSCI audited. And also in this range of standards, fair trade is also quite popular. We can go to the last slide, last topic. Just very quick overview in the yes, next one. We can see that what is the main standard is that a main trend is now that we see quite huge planting of the new young plant rings, and actually this is also additional reason why the macadamia prices went down, because a couple of years it was quite exotic product on the market. Now it's becoming common, and because many countries are increasing production, and because of this overproduction, prices go down. We can just switch to the next slide, maybe the last one. Yeah, what's going on now in South Africa? We can see that they increase production, but they also increasingly import in-shell nuts from Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Malawi, and processed in South Africa, and after that re-export. Also, they are increasing export of in-shells to China, and we see some operations of South African companies in Kenya. In Australia, until October this year, there was huge decrease of the export in-shells to China, but now they started to export more of in-shells. In general, they are increasing in-shell sales, and what was successful Australia, they quite developed Japanese market, and now Australia is working a lot, but also together with the Macadamia, World Macadamia Organization on potential development of Indian market. India is not importing macadamia nuts in big quantities, and so the idea of World Macadamia Organization is also to develop this market. And the last slide. Yeah, and now in Kenya we have the big discussion of the temporary lift of ban of in-shell nuts. So Kenyans can apply and export in-shell nuts, which was not possible until now. Kenya is quite much focused on environmental sustainability. Most of Kenyan macadamia nuts are not sprayed with pesticides. They have zero or no pesticides. The farmers are usually, most of the production is intercropped with some other crops. For example, they don't use in Kenya ethyphone, which is the synthetic substance which forces macadamia nuts to drop, which is used in Australia, for example. And this can provide some further competitive advantages for Kenyan suppliers, but the quality is still the issue, and most of the buyers still see Kenyan nuts a little bit of the inferior quality compared to, for example, South Africa and Australia. And finally, we have China, which is still the big importer of macadamia nuts, but they are growing, and in the long term, we can see that maybe they will less import and more rely on own production. So this will be finish of my short presentation. Sorry for talking too fast. I was there, just wanted to tell you more.
You actually have one more slide, Alexander.
Yeah, yes, the last one is just a small illustration of the suppliers in Europe. And as you can see, although South Africa and Australia are the biggest exporter in the world, and Kenya is actually the third. Kenya made their own place in Europe, and Kenya is now the third one. And if you can see that the Kenya is the only country which has, until 2022, which shows a constant increase of export to Europe. On the contrary, Australia decreased the export, focusing more on China and Japan, and the similar situation is South Africa. So we hope that we can see the bright future for the Kenyan suppliers. Although, of course, this temporary price decrease and the very big crisis for everybody in the world is a big concern for everyone. But in the long term, I hope that the market will recover.
Thank you for that, Alexander. And as we wait for Yannic to come online, I am going to ask you one question in our first Q&A session. And that's a brief question. So you've said that we've seen that the price has decreased a lot. At the same time, we see that there's a lot of planting going on, and the market is going to be, well, maybe not flooded, but is definitely going to be provided with large numbers of macadamia. So very briefly, how do you think the market is going to develop, and what should I do if, for example, I am a macadamia producer?
Yeah, I think that it is nobody of us is fortune teller, but we can see that that macadamia is perhaps following very similar trend that was as of cashew nuts. If we remember, for example, like 10 or maybe 15 years ago, cashew nut was also very expensive and very exotic nut in Europe. And now it's very common, one of the most popular nuts. Everybody likes to snack cashew nuts because of the appealing taste. And I think that maybe the macadamia nuts is going to have the similar future. As production is increasing all over the world. So I think in the couple of next year, it will be more affordable nut. Prices are going to decrease, but luckily new and good production technologies also enable you to decrease your cost of the production. So I believe that we will have a kind of similar situation, that more automatization of in the processing lines and something like that, it can improve the efficiency of production. I think also that in most producing countries, the new macadamia cultivars will be used, which are more productive. And for example, it's already happening in Kenya. Instead of tetraphylla, they are using more on the grafted cultivars, more Macadamia tegrifolia type. And I think that something like this is going to help producers also to increase the yields, and so they can keep up with expecting like lower price. And I think it's good for them, because if we see in Europe that the macadamia is very expensive, we're not going to buy it. I mean, from the perspective of the final consumer, and people like the taste of it. So I think with the decrease of the price, people will start to eat it more.
Okay, so that is a good perspective, that maybe prices are dropping, but sales volumes may increase as the price drops, and that is obviously good news for producers as well. Thank you very much for your presentation, Aleksandar. And we are now going to move on to an emerging or growing market opportunity, actually. And this is a topic that Yannic is going to be telling us about. So there you are, Yannic, and just a brief overview of who you are and what you do for our viewers. And I am just making you presenter so that you can share your slides with us. Please go ahead.
So now you should see the presentation mode. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just a second. Now it's switched again. So, yes. Hello to everyone again. Very, very pleased and absolutely happy to be here. Thanks again, Aleksandar, for reaching out to me and for making that possible. Yeah, today we want to have the perspective from, let's say, from the other side, not from the growers and from the kernel side, but from the oil side. And yeah, we want to see how we could enter the European market together for macadamia oil. So yeah, I was making up my mind where to start, and I thought it's a good idea to start, let's say, with a negative point and then to end up positive. This is a bit anonymized, our sales of macadamia kernel oil for the company Henri Lamotte Oils. This shows very clearly, indeed, what Aleksandar just showed and presented volume-wise. This is especially our sales in Europe. I excluded our export sales. We are selling worldwide, but I excluded our export sales, which went a bit better. But you can clearly see with the energy crisis and the war in Ukraine, yeah, prices increased all around the world. People had less money in the pocket. So of course, what happens, you start to cut off your budget and you start with the luxury products and not with the basic goods. This is what you can very, very clearly see, just to be very clear and precise. This is with the data from last week where I stopped. There is no order book included. The order book would show what Aleksandar presented as well. There is hope and there is increasing sales due to, let's say, very good and very low pricing at the moment. And then I wanted to show you the number as well for the food use, because as you can see, it's only a 10% average per year of this oil that we sell in food or supplements. Most of it is indeed cosmetic. So how can we get the turnaround? So then we want to have a look at the market driver. We saw a lot of this already with Aleksandar, but from the oil perspective, we'll try to talk you through a little bit. What influenced the prices, let's say, in a negative way, looking at the sales? Of course, price inflation. As said, people had less money in the pocket, and then you cut off your luxury budget in the supermarket when you buy your grocery. Of course, there were cheaper alternative products. We always heard that in customers' meetings and customers' annual reviews. There's cheaper alternatives like almond, like apricot, like other stuff. So this is where people open up the books and open up the recipes, especially in the cosmetic sales, but also in food. Yeah, people changed recipes in order to keep the price in the shelf more or less the same, in order not to risk and to lose more customers. And then over the last years, something we always told our suppliers and partners that we always criticized, over the last years, there have been very, very few market launches due to very short R&D budgets, and this is now coming around, and people really notice there's something that we need to change. This will come to the other side as well. So what we can see, Aleksandar referred to that, there's a heavily increasing production in China. I still remember when I went to Kenya the very first time, many years back, already a decade back. Many of my partners and friends told me China is now planting the first few million trees, and this will take a few years to come around. And now we just snapped our fingers, and now it's 10 years later, and China is growing like crazy and is decreasing the dependency of their imports. And this is what we saw in the presentation from Aleksandar. But of course, this leads to decreasing prices in the rest of the world. People need to find new outlets and new markets. We could agree, I guess, there's an overproduction worldwide of kernels, but also of oil. So everybody is talking about prices. Everybody is trying to get businesses. And this is, of course, for us, it's as an oil producer and as a buyer, that's a very nice perspective. I can frankly say that, but the last years have been hard as well. So this is a bit of the turnover, I would say, and this leads us to very high pressure to find new markets. I was in Australia this year, and I talked to many farmers and to many producers, and everybody said the same. There's an overproduction. People are still planting. And if we don't speed up and if we don't really increase the work to find new markets, then the market will collapse, and then many people will rather stop to produce, because the more you produce, the more you lose. It's an old business rule, and then you better stop. Or people even think about cutting trees down and move to another product. This is, of course, what we don't want. So there is pressure to find new markets. And of course, we are always open to talk and to help on that one. So then we want to talk about major quality requirements. I would try to keep that very short and sweet. Obviously, you have to be, the oil has to be free from plasticizers or phthalates, call it as you like. But the macadamia, as Aleksandar correctly said, is the richest nut and the richest kernel when it comes to fat. There's around 80%, a bit more, of fat. When you transfer the kernel into oil, you still get a yield of 55% average of oil. And yeah, if you have a production with, let's say, very high mileage and kilometers of conveyor belts where you sort and wash and crack and whatever, then it's really most likely that the kernel will like suck up the plasticizers from the conveyor belts if you don't use the correct, like, food grade certified conveyor belts. This is really a heavy topic. The second one, and maybe a topic, at least we Germans and Europeans really don't want to talk about that anymore, because it's really annoying for the rest of the world. I guess it's a rather new topic, but as well, Aleksandar said correctly, the Germans are already seeing that as a legal limit. It is not, but it will be starting from 24, at least for MOA. This will be a legal limit for food. I included the guidelines, which are guidelines right now, which will be legal limits pretty soon. For MOSH, this is 13 milligrams per kilo, and for MOA, this is max 2. Why is that so strict? They are considered to be highly cancerogenic, so really dangerous. So we don't want to have that in your food. As well, for the cosmetics, just on a side note, if you produce lipsticks or baby cosmetics, the people with kids know that sometimes cosmetics even are, let's say, consumed a little bit by babies or by kids. So obviously this is for cosmetics as well. And then especially for the oil, you need to guarantee an acid value of maximum 4 if you want to be in food. Otherwise, you are not considered to be a food inside Europe. And obviously, needless to say, I still say it, we need a consistent, perfect quality all year long. There can't be heavy deviations. So we want to guarantee, and we have to guarantee to our customers, the same consistent quality all over the year. Then we want to have a bit of an outlook on the food use in future and how we can increase that altogether. So let's start with what is already there. At the moment, since many months, we have very attractive price levels indeed for supermarkets and for discounters to have a look at implementing macadamia oil as a new product, because right now it's hard to find in any supermarket or discounter. In the past we had that, so we of course we have the network, and we want to get back into there. Rather it's Aldi or Lidl, or if it's other big supermarket chains. There's some projects going on already, but still there's room for more. We have the awareness of the consumers for macadamia kernel benefits, specifically kernel benefits, and we need to transfer that into the oil as well and make people aware of. I guess for the future, we will have a stable and reliable supply and pricing, no ups and downs. I guess right now, with the situation where we are, there will be a certain price. That's what many people told me from Australia, from Kenya, from South Africa. When you want to reach mass markets and when you want to move product, then you need to find reliable and stable pricing. So then we want to have a look at what still needs to be done. There's lots of work to do. So let's have a quick look. Obviously, we need more marketing action and more, let's say, financial investments in marketing by the industry. I was talking to some people from South Africa Macadamia Association a few weeks ago, and they confirmed at the moment they think it's not enough. It's less what they do, and there's ideas going around, and there's a bit of budget that is going to be released pretty soon for more marketing action, for more social media posts, for whatever, just to make people aware of kernels, but also about the oil. As I said before, we need the awareness of the consumers for macadamia oil benefits. One of the most raised questions when we talk to food customers: why should I add macadamia oil as a food to my business or to my supermarkets? Or where's the benefit? Isn't that a cosmetic? This is one of the most raised questions. We need very, very hard work by the producers, and of course, including ourselves as wholesalers. We have the network, and we need to transfer the origin, the producers, with the customers, whether it's B2B or even B2C when it goes to supermarkets. And we see ourselves in the middle. Let's call us the bridge between origin and customer, and we assure the quality and stable supply and so on. But of course, we need to work hard. Now it's, let's say, the perfect storm for everyone in the market, and everyone is willing to profit out of that, and so are we willing to help with that. Then let's talk about the most promising potential as well. One of the most raised questions: if we talk to people about macadamia oil in the food use, which quality should I use? What would you recommend? For us, the answer is pretty clear. It's a cold pressed or / extra virgin, call it as you like. But this is, as a food use, I would say, or we have the opinion, this is the most promising potential. We see the biggest chance in sales Europe-wide, maybe even worldwide, when you talk about a very good cold pressed extra virgin, very nice, mild, nutty flavor, and then use it as a salad oil, as a marinade. We really are convinced that a refined oil, whether it's organic or not, is not really a mass industry product, and you will not reach mass markets in the food with macadamia refined, because it's just too expensive and you take out the wonderful nutty flavor. So there's nothing to it in the end. Yeah, the private label sales in bottles, as I said before, we have many projects going on right now that were a bit, let's say, paused or on hold due to the war, due to inflation. But now people are a bit coming back to normal life, coming back to bigger R&D budgets, and people are willing to talk about that. Last year, nobody wanted to talk about new products because they said there's no chance. We need to be like in the very bottom shelf with the lowest price we can get for any kind of oil. And this year and for the next years as well, we see pretty good chances in the private label sales. And then, of course, as I said, in our opinion, this is not going to be like a million tons mass market product, like a commodity. but we are talking to startup companies, or of course typically to SMEs. We are ourselves still a privately owned company in family hands, so we are very strong and well connected in that sector of the business. And that's already it. Thank you for your attention, and yeah, really looking forward to connect with you in the future. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Yannic. And I do have a question for you, and I'm tying that to a question that Monica asked on our questions tab. So you say that the market has been affected by all the developments that we've seen over the past few years. Now, suppose I am a macadamia producer and I'm trying to add more value to my product. I don't just want to ship the commodity, the unprocessed nuts, but I'm really interested in getting into the processed macadamia market. So oil is one route that I could choose, but as you've just said, it's not going to be a 1 million tons market, and you don't really foresee an immense growth in consumer demand. So can you share anything about maybe the use of processed macadamia products, or maybe just the oil, in addition to the oil, sorry, in terms of trends? Do you expect the market to pick up in terms of demand for processed macadamia or not?
Yes, indeed. So I'm not really a too deep expert in that, because we are focused on oils especially. But of course, after talks with many partners and many visits in the origin this year and last year, we really have the feeling that what we call the press cake, the oil producers amongst us will know what that is. Like the outcome when you produce the oil, there's the press cake left, still really full with nutrients and full with really good nutritional values. And at the moment as well, there's many action, and there are many projects going on to use that to produce value out of the press cake, which in the past has been thrown away or was turned into, let's say, into briquettes to heat your boilers or to feed your boilers with that, which would be like very sustainable, of course, to have a full cycle, but it would be better to sell it as a food product. There's the bigger value in it, no doubt. And just to give you one or two examples that we heard from our partners is, for example, like a macadamia spread. That you can make out of that. Not 100%. You have to mix with other ingredients, of course. But for example, this is something you could look at. You could claim vegan. You could claim palm oil free, whatever you like. And of course, full of very good nutrients. And as well, some German companies started to implement that into their snack bars or protein bars or that kind of, let's say, functional food. There's a tiny bit of macadamia, let's say, press cake or further produced press cake in that. So there is potential definitely, and turning your leftovers into high valued food products is the way to go, because if you want to produce oil, there's always press cake and you need to do something with it.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Monica, I think this says lots of potential and lots of work to do. Thank you so much, Yannic.
Most welcome.
Thank you. We are now going to move on to a presentation from Jens. And Jens, I am going to give you the presenting rights. There you are. And Jens is going to be sharing from a buyer perspective. Please go ahead.
Okay, my presentation is quite short. And I also did not tackle organic, where Kenya is obviously the largest producer now in the world. And that's why I see good options for your businesses. The good news is that the Kenyan macadamias, different to 2 years ago, have now found their way into the German retailers' specifications. You have seen this from Aleksandar's presentations. The numbers have really gone up. Previously, it used to be a substitute for, let's say, expensive other origins, and it was blended in, not really saying so. Now it is part of the specification. During the first quarter in 2023, in Germany at least, the market was really depressed. A colleague of mine had asked me whether our fax machine is still working because there were no orders coming in. The problem was, of course, overproduction, but then also the post-COVID reactions, because there were a lot of stocks actually They had to be diminished, and consumption has decreased. Of course, people cutting back due to the energy crisis. During the lockdown, actually the COVID lockdowns, the home eating was very popular because we were not supposed to go out anyway. So consumers spent a lot of money for premium food. They moved into organic, or they were looking for fair trade, but also local and sustainable products became very popular. With the crisis and the increased inflation, the consumers cut back. Organic sales dropped up to 25% in Germany. I heard even more in other European countries. Supermarkets, who were the winners during COVID, they have lost substantial turnover against the discounters again. And you know that Germany is a very strong discount market, and the consumers went back to those. Even Lidl, who is, let's say, a premium discounter in Germany, who was taking, let's say, the shares of Aldi for a while, had shown losses, because in the mindset of the consumers, Aldi is still the best buy. Very long stocks actually were also created by the overestimations during the COVID times, and nobody wanted to adjust their sales numbers by reality, and slow consumption caused by the higher prices and the inflation has really forced the buyers to wait for a long time until they get rid of the inventories. We are actually right now going into this phase that, there's more demand, that people started to call shipments, not just on macadamias, but also on other nuts as well. As Aleksandar also pointed out, is that the brand products have lost significant shares. A lot of the big companies like Unilever, they're cutting back. They are trying to sell, let's say, national specialties to other groups because they focus on global markets. The premium ice cream brands who had used macadamias in the past quite significantly, they have lost a lot of their volume also against the private label. And as Aleksandar also showed, Lidl, for example, is running the biggest European ice cream factory right now, and they are selling a lot of ice creams, but very limited, let's say, varieties. Macadamia seem to be one of their trials. The Chinese lockdowns, that's another point which had caused the crunch in the nut industry, because China, of course, is still a huge consumer, especially for the Chinese New Year consumption. Because the Chinese were trapped, they couldn't travel, they haven't really purchased a lot of nuts, basically. They still import a lot of macadamia nuts in shell, because the quality of their own production seems to be not very good. So they are blending in imported nuts and trying to sell their Chinese nuts with it. In Germany, the macadamia price for a snack item, like 125 gram, which is the most common serving here, has been decreased to €1.99 per bag. That's significant if you consider the previous prices were, let's say, $3.49 or even $3.79 for a long time. We believe that with that, the consumer awareness will become better. We see already that the discounters are running specials, partially also, of course, because of the competition. They want to beat the competitors, but also they had long inventories for a while and they tried to move some stocks. And always when they launch these special sales, you can see that sales really pick up. Sometimes the shelves are even empty. As I already pointed out, in general, nuts and dried fruit sales were slower than during COVID, or are slower than during COVID, but we think that the consumption has kind of stabilized, and we may be back to the, let's say, pre-COVID times, and see a slow and slight increase in consumption, but not, let's say, in the pace of the COVID where we had 20% increase and so on. So we're back to the previous times, I think. With the macadamia prices expected to remain lower because of the increasing world production, we also believe that there's a good chance that macadamias will find their way to the consumers. In the past years, it was always short in supply, and large projects were basically impossible because there was always the hiccup that at the moment when the development was done, there was no product available. So this situation may help today. Sure, prices will be lower, but when I remember, let's say, going back a couple of years, the price for style 1 from Australia or South Africa at those days was maybe $14 or $12. And then the sky was the limit for a period. I think we are now facing reality. But on the other hand, with, let's say, prices competitive with other nuts, I think there's a very good chance. Here in Europe, we are all facing the difficulties with the latest political directions given by the governments. German government has launched a due diligence law, which includes a lot of other things as well. For example, deforestation is the latest thing we discuss. Couple of commodities are already in the focus, and we also know that there's a EU directive in the works which will follow, and that draft we've seen so far is even worse than the German part. So we all will have a lot of work and discussions. It will lead into more and more certifications and paperwork, actually. And we believe that it's going to be a broad field for NGOs and law companies who will use this as a good tool to either push their ideas through or actually make it a business model. As I said, it's a difficult environment for the stakeholders. Everyone is trying to look into their supply chain. They question more and more, where's the product coming from, who has put his hands on, what origins are, let's say, safer than others. So I can only encourage everyone to look into this and to see how it can be managed, that the traceability is transparent and also the requested certifications are available. We've seen that already the cocoa, tea, and coffee people are in trouble a little bit or having difficulties because the Deforestation Act, for example, requires that they have to prove where the products are coming from and whether they were rainforest 20 years ago or not, which will become a real issue for many of these people. As far as we heard, for example, the European customs may check the geographic data and compare it with the data from 20 years ago. We also heard that cashews, for example, are another nut, item coming out of the nut category. I think we believe that with the tree nuts, we are kind of in better shape because we actually cause more trees planted, whether it's a monoculture or not, but it's more trees on the earth, which is not so bad, rather than, let's say, other crops. Yeah, a few more things Aleksandar already mentioned. Associated with the quality requirements, we need certifications. As he mentioned, SMETA is a common thing. BSCI is a German standard, basically. Global gap may be included, that could help. For organic, EU organic or Swiss organic, then of course fair trade, Rainforest Alliance, and as we all know, quality management systems. Here for Germany, it's basically IF is very often, but it's also accepted to provide FSSC or BRC certificates. Pasteurization for macadamia kernels is quite, let's say, important. As we all know, they can have salmonella, and a lot of processors around the globe, they have already invested in pasteurization facilities. I think this is going to become more and more important for the future. The mineral oil issues are there, and also contaminants, as Yannic already mentioned, for example, from the production lines, from the conveyor belts. They also have to be monitored. We had seen already a couple of complaints, and then we all have to do a lot of research and try to find out what is the contamination cause. Very difficult and very tough task. That is basically my presentation. I also wanted to thank you to make me part of the presentations again today, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jens, and please do stay online for a few minutes more. And at this point, I would also like to invite Yannic and Aleksandar to switch on their cameras for a couple of questions. Jens, while we wait for them to come online, I'm going to start off with a question to you. MOSH, MOA, sustainability, pasteurization, deforestation, traceability, organic, origins checks at the borders, due diligence by the EU. It's a lot. And especially, I can imagine that if I'm a small producer or a smallholder, just any SME that is interested in exporting macadamia nuts or even processed macadamia to Europe, I would find this a little intimidating, to be honest. And then there's obviously the market developments where you see prices are going down, and I have to be able to sell a lot more to maintain my revenues and maintain my profits. And at the same time, we've heard from Yannic that this isn't going to grow into a 1 million tons market. So if I'm feeling a little intimidated after listening to all of this, is there any suggestion or any advice that you could offer a smallholder farmer to say, well, this is what is going on, but there are still a lot of opportunities and still a lot of business prospects for you on the European market? What would you say?
Well, to be very honest, I do not have really a lot of positive things to say. Europe seems to be going the direction of a protectionism, in my opinion. As I'm the vice chairman at FUCOM, which is our lobbying association, I'm also engaged in a lot of negotiations with regards to regulations. And there are more to come, which is very unfortunate. I can only encourage everyone who is seriously interested to stay in this market, for example, to team up, let's say, with, say, associations, become maybe a member of the FUCOM, for example, where we have, let's say, other foreign members, like the Australians are looking into it, but we got Chile for walnuts, we have the almond board from California, a couple of other countries. And they all monitor what is going on in the EU, and they also really try to impact a little bit, so help us, because we're not the producers. That's also the other issue. You know way better what you're doing with your products, how you grow them, and you could provide good arguments, actually. What we also notice is that, unfortunately, the bureaucrats in Brussels are just human beings and only consumers. They have not much experience with our products, and we also always try to educate them a little bit about the obstacles. One of the problems I see, for example, right now is that current systems or, let's say, projects like Rainforest Alliance or the mass balance thing and so on and so forth, or even private, let's say, private attempts to support, let's say, villages or certain projects in the origins, they're going to be disturbed and maybe sometimes impossible when the EU legislation comes in place, because the reporting and all the requirements are so massive that, I mean, the people just can't handle it anymore. So that's the problem. Quite sorry to say that, but that's unfortunately the way it seems to go.
The
it's
reality.
Not very good. Yeah. I'm hoping we have elections next year soon in the EU. So I hope that most of the regulations they have planned are not going through, honestly.
Okay, so I'm hoping that since we do have a lot of people from Europe attending this webinar, that hopefully we have some European bureaucrats listening who need to understand that they should also take into account the consequences of regulations on smallholder farmers. Thank you for sharing that, Jens, even though it's not really encouraging. I'm going to turn to Aleksandar next. Aleksandar, from your perspective as a market researcher, I'm basically going to ask you the same question. So we've just heard from Jens that the market in Europe might be moving in a direction of much more protectionism. There's a lot more compliance requirements. There are many more buyer requirements are increasing in line with the regulations that have been put in place, and more regulations are expected. So if I'm a smallholder producer and very much more intimidated now that I've heard this about Europe, from your perspective as a market researcher, where should I be looking for opportunities?
I don't want to repeat what Jens already told, but I fully agree with him. But on the other hand, I believe that the key word is perhaps cooperation for those smallholder producers, and already we have some good examples actually in a good association of farmers and processors. And even the Jens is actually working, but on the much higher level in the kind of cooperation with company which is sourcing in us from the different origins and selling them all together. So actually, inside each individual country, they can be chances on this. On one of my previous slides, I just mentioned that each country needs to find their own unique selling points, and I underlined, for example, several Kenyan selling points. As for example, sustainability is now a very key issue for Europe. Now they have a lot of chances, because if they don't choose irrigation, of course, I don't recommend. I really recommend that they use irrigation because the yield is going up. But when they don't use it, they can really promote it as very sustainable compared to other heavily water-using countries. And the minimum level of pesticides is also a very good opportunity to show that you are different. So they need to find their ways actually, but it's not always good and easy. But as Jens also mentioned, that he is a member of the FRUCOM, which is the Association of European Traders of Nuts and Dried Fruit. I believe that also each country needs also to make their part of that and maybe become the member, and also to lobby much stronger. And we had in the recent history actually, we had very good examples of the Turkish association. For example, they already managed a couple of times to lobby that European Union postpone some decisions that can cut the sales in Europe. A couple of years ago, for example, they cut down heavily one very important chemical and which produces all this spray, the grapes. It was the grapes at that time. It was maybe 5-6 years ago. And if this legislation would be implemented at that time, they could not sell us anything. But after successful lobbying, they could postpone that actually. Okay. So I'm not advocating using a lot of pesticides, something like this, but I'm just advocating lobbying, because this kind of lobbying and cooperation between farmers and processors can actually make everything to go much smoothly in the market. Okay. So that I helped a little bit.
Thank you. I think that that offers indeed a little glimmer of hope for our producers and exporters. So basically, producers and exporters, if you're not yet part of a cooperative or a cooperative working relationship, lobby club or anything, please do join, because there is strength in numbers. That's basically what Aleksandar is saying. And Yannic, I saw you nodding along with both Jens and Aleksandar. I think I'm going to try and pull it a little broader for you. So you said that there seem to be developing opportunities when it comes to higher value added products in terms of processed macadamia. Now, suppose I want to capitalize on those opportunities. I see this opportunity in the market. I've listened to this webinar. I've heard you encourage me. I've heard some discouraging words from Jens about market developments. I've heard some little encouraging words from Aleksandar about it. Could you maybe close up this first round of questions with something positive, as in what actions can I take as a producer if I want to really start selling more processed and more value-added macadamia products on the market, and maybe focus on oil?
Yeah, obviously it's still hard to say, because nobody has the crystal ball, and like Jens said, we are not fortune tellers. But from, let's say, from the history, we can easily say that, of course, cooperating and working together. For example, in Kenya, where we source quite a lot, if it's conventional or organic, and if it's like Fair for Life certified or whatever. In the past, we started and we met a few people, just with 10 trees and 15 trees and a bit of trees here and there, of intercropping. And of course, then you don't have a strong position. But nowadays we are talking to people that are in cooperatives together with, let's say, 600 to 700 farmers, sometimes even more. And of course, when you then, let's say, have a chairman that organizes, for example, sales of kernels, of in-shells, of whatever, to the producing industry, to crackers, to exporters, of course, your position and your strength as a community is way better compared to being an individual with, let's say, 1.5 kilos of in-shells. So this is one of the examples I really like about Kenya, for example. And compared to South Africa, where you talk about plantations more or less across the country, and the smallholding farming in Kenya is state of the art, and really a very lovely example how it can work. And then I guess this is the way to be successful. You will not be successful as a very individual yourself, or as a very, let's say, small company with a few kilos of product, but you need to be very strong, and you need to cooperate. Yeah, especially, and we need to be very careful in the market, not to, let's say, to cannibalize ourselves, because over the last years we saw many oil producers like popping up, climbing down the trees. There was another company here, another company, and then two other companies, and this was, for example, for avocado and for macadamia oil, especially in Kenya. When I started buying from Kenya like 10 years back, there were, let's say, in avocado oil, for example, there were 5 producers, 5 reliable, really good producers. I guess nowadays the most recent number should be more than 20 oil producers. And the market is not really keeping up with the speed of new companies popping up. There's lots of foreign investment, foreign capital. And so therefore, yeah, I guess not to be very strong as an individual, but try to work together with other people, try to be in a reliable partnership, whether it's a company like ours, for example, as a big partner in Europe, or with people in the origin, and yeah, to be together as a strong bond of people, and to be more successful than with way more expertise, more product, and better pricing.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Yannic. And David, I hope this answers your question a bit as well, because you asked the question about building market confidence. Unfortunately, there are no offtake guarantees, as you asked, but I think that with what you've heard from our 3 experts, that it does give at least some indication of where you could start to build market confidence, or at least to gain a stronger position as a producer or an exporter in the market. I would very much like to thank our experts for joining us today. And I just said that this was the first round of questions, but obviously this is the last round of questions looking at the time. So to Aleksandar, to Jens, and to Yannic, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us. It was an absolute pleasure to have you, and even though the message wasn't entirely positive and we're not all going to be running to invest in more macadamia farms the second this webinar is over, I do think that you've provided us with some very useful points of advice and very useful ideas that we can take and think about and see what we can do in our various businesses. Thank you very much for joining us, and goodbye to you for now. And I would now like to ask Simone to please join us on the screen. Hi, Simone. And would you share a little bit about where we can find more information? And obviously to do that, I need to make you the presenter.
Absolutely. Well, while we figure that, I'd just also like to thank our speakers for their presentation today. That was incredibly informative, and I'm sure the audience experienced it that way as well. However, a webinar is limited. We've been here for an hour and a half, so we can't capture all the information that the audience may be searching for within one webinar. So for that, it's good that we have additional information published on CBI's website. So if any of you are curious or want to know more about the types of trends that Aleksandar highlighted, the opportunities that we heard about from Yannic, or even the requirements and the upcoming regulations that Jens highlighted, you do have access to free and up-to-date market information on CBI's website. So I'll give you a quick presentation to show you how you can get there. So I'll just head over to my browser, and what you're seeing here is CBI's website. You may be able to see the address up here. It's cbi.eu. And once you're here, you'll see that the very first tab refers to market information, which covers all the type of information that we've heard from today in the webinar, but in the form of studies and downloadable PDFs so that you can read that in the comfort of your office, your home, and take all the time you need. To be able to find the relevant information, of course, you could make use of the search bar and search for our information related to macadamia specifically, or you could navigate by searching through our sectors. So if you go down here, you'll notice that one of these refers to processed fruit and vegetables and edible nuts. So that's where we want to be. And this is all the market information that we have available for the sector as a whole. This includes information about the demand and opportunities, trends. Also, you can see it here, the EU Green Deal, so all the types of regulations that Jens was highlighting and that we just heard about in our last Q&A section. But not to worry, we also have very practical tips that'll teach you how to tackle these, how to get prepared, how to organize your exports, and ensure that you can actually meet these requirements. And these can be found here on the right side. These are all our tip studies. We try to keep them practical and hands-on so that you are able to actually implement them and follow the tips developed by our experts like Aleksandar. If you want to learn more about a specific product, such as macadamia, of course, you can go to our product studies. And here we go. With macadamia nuts, you'll see that you'll have access to two quite extensive studies about either the market potential, if you want to just delve a little bit deeper into what the trends look like, what the European market is looking like. I saw some questions in the chat about specific importer country profiles. You'll be able to get a bit more information on that if you go into this study. And market entry would then be the information about how to actually access the market, what the requirements are, what you need to comply with, and of course, all the rules and regulations. One way that we share information, of course, in addition to these studies, is by hosting webinars such as the one you just attended today. All our webinars are recorded and uploaded to CBI's YouTube channel, so that you can also recommend it to perhaps colleagues or other people you know in the sector that might be interested in following this webinar. Or you can consult previous ones that we've had. We see one on cashews that was held some months ago, and that you can also just watch through YouTube. One way to stay in touch, because we do publish updates to studies. You may have noticed that the Macadamia one on the website right now is from last year, but we have the latest version coming up any day now. And one way to make sure that you don't miss out on this information is by subscribing to our newsletter. If you click here, you'll be able to subscribe and also choose the specific sector that you're interested in. So don't worry, we won't spam you with information about all kinds of different industries and sectors, but you'll be sure that you'll only be receiving information and updates about processed fruits, vegetables, and edible nuts. That's it for our market information. I really do encourage you all to visit our website, but I had also promised I had a little bit of information about a specific opportunity for our Kenyan colleagues that are in today's webinar. So if I could just share that. As we mentioned at the start, CBI has been running a macadamia program in Kenya for some years now, and we are transitioning into a second phase. And for this phase, we're recruiting Kenyan processors of macadamia nuts to participate in this project. So we're looking for processors that are interested in exporting macadamia nuts to Europe or other markets. You can also simply have an interest in increasing your activity in trade and increasing your exports. We're really looking for processors that are looking to improve their relationships in their supply chain, make them more transparent and beneficial to all, and that would also be interested in trying out pilot innovations to be able to improve these relationships. Of course, that would require some investment in terms of time and resources to join this project and to be able to really take on all these innovations that our experts will help you with. And finally, by joining this project, of course, you also become part of a community. And the idea here is that everybody shares best practices and lessons learned, and that you would, of course, also have access to case studies and to information from other processors that are simply trying to implement the same types of innovations as you and that are perhaps running into the same challenges while trying to access new markets. It's a very interesting project. I would definitely encourage you all to apply. The deadline is fast incoming. It's already the next week on the 8th of December. So if you'd be interested in applying or getting more information, if you have any questions, send an email to agriculture@cbi.eu. You can see it here, and simply request the application form so that you can apply before the deadline. Tonya mentioned it at the start. We will be sending this PowerPoint as a PDF, so we'll make sure to include this slide so that you have this information on hand and can look back at the email address and you don't lose it. So with that, I'd perhaps like to hand it over to Tonya to finish it up. Thank you all very much for dialing in. I hope you make use of all the free resources that we have available for you, and good luck in your journey of exporting your macadamia.
Thank you very much for that, Simone. And I would just like to close up because we have come almost to the end of our webinar. So I would just like to close up with two things. And let if GoToWebinar allows me to share my screen, it does. Okay, so as Simone already said, CBI organizes a number of webinars, and there are 2 more webinars that are scheduled for next month, starting tomorrow, which is starting tomorrow. So there's a webinar scheduled for the 4th of December and for the 7th of December. Now, this webinar may be of interest to you or to someone in your network. Please do feel free to share this information and point it out to anyone, or come back later and rewatch the webinar. For today, just a reminder that we are going to be sharing a recording of today's webinar with you, as the webinar was recorded, and that email that you received with the recording, if I am correct, will also contain a link to the market study, the updated market study that Simone was talking about. And if not, make sure that you are subscribed to our newsletter, because you will be receiving an update as soon as it is published. Before we close, I would like to invite you to fill out an evaluation survey that's going to appear on your screen almost immediately after we close the webinar. It's going to take you less than 1 minute to fill it in. And basically, we would like to hear from you. How was it? If you think today's webinar was terrible, give us a 1. If you think it was fantastic, give us a 10. And most likely your score is going to be somewhere between the 1 and a 10. We would really appreciate it if you just take that 1 minute to fill out the survey. That brings us to the end of today's webinar. I want to thank you for staying with us. I want to thank you for being here today. And again, a big thank you to our speakers, to Simone, Jorrit, and the rest of the team at CBI behind the screens. We don't see them all, but they are instrumental in making sure that we can offer these webinars. And to our participants, thank you again for being here today. And we look forward to seeing you at another webinar. Have a wonderful day and see you next time. Bye.